The nation of Iran, which, by the way, just as an aside, it's wild how fast the news cycle is moving right now. Because if you go out into the street and you ask an average person about us, meaning America, bombing Iran, they might say, oh yeah, that was a while ago. I almost forgot about that. It's like, brother, that was last month that happened. It's wild. If, just as an example, if Canada surprise bombed the nuclear sites here in the US, we would be talking about that nonstop for many, many months. It would be like the Pearl Harbor of the 21st century. But we did it last month, and already most people have forgotten that it even happened. Now, I shouldn't even compare Canada and Iran. There's a lot of nuance, but I'm just saying the news cycle is moving fast. Regardless, though, Iran is facing a lot of troubles right now. Besides the ones we know about, like us bombing their nuclear sites, Israel killing most of their military leadership, Israel also bombing a lot of other sites besides the nuclear sites that we either destroyed or, if not destroyed, damaged. You also had sanctions getting ratcheted up with the second Trump administration. And on top of it all, there is a certain problem that I want to discuss today that's been brewing underneath the surface that most people outside of Iran aren't even aware of. And it's the fact that the country, Iran, is running out of water. They're facing a severe water crisis. And I don't mean in the center of the country that's more arid, mountainous, and desert, but rather in the actual big cities where people live. Like, for instance, the capital city of Tehran, where water pressure is so low in many apartment buildings that taps are literally running dry for hours on end. People are desperately searching for water tanks, but to no avail because they just can't find them anywhere. They're all sold out. You have people hoarding every single drop of water that they can find, and even the reservoirs themselves are literally in the process of running dry. The situation has actually gotten so bad that in a cabinet meeting just last Monday, you had the president of Iran, Mr. Masoud, I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly, Pezeshkian. He had to admit the following to the whole country, quote, "The water crisis is more serious than what is being talked about today. And if we do not make urgent decisions today, we will face a situation in the future that cannot be cured. We cannot continue this way." Further along in the same speech, he actually admitted that this water crisis was largely due to gross government mismanagement, which really is a significant statement for an Iranian official to make, especially the president. Now, 2 days after he made that statement, you had the Iranian government. They came out and they shut down all government offices as well as all government services within both the capital city of Tehran as well as 24 other cities across the whole country. They also created what's known as a 3-day weekend in an attempt to lower water and electricity usage also across the whole country. And actually, to that end, you had Ms. Fatima Mohajirani, sorry if I butchered that name, she was a government spokeswoman, and she came out and suggested people to, quote, "go on holiday in order to preserve water." And so all this suggests that this is a very serious problem. On the ground, people cannot get water. They're doing everything they can to get water. It's not coming out of their taps. Nobody has water. And also the government is literally shutting down their offices and calling for a 3-day weekend in order for people to be able to preserve water and electricity, which we'll get to in a moment. Now, the reason for this water crisis is largely twofold. Firstly, there have been several years of severe droughts facing the country of Iran. In fact, the Ministry of Energy, they said that the annual rainfall in the country, it declined from an average of 11 inches per year down to 6 inches per year, creating what they called the worst drought in 50 years. This then led to reservoirs drying up, wells turning empty, wetlands being turned into sand and dust storms. You had crops and livestock dying. Lakes have dried up, so people cannot go fishing and they can't go swimming. And perhaps even more alarming than all of that, you have parts of the country which are actually starting to sink. For instance, in the capital city of Tehran, parts of the city are sinking at a rate of over 12 inches per year because the local water aquifers have just been sucked up. That is, I guess, what happens after 5 years of drought. However, the weather alone isn't to blame, because aside from the heat and general lack of rain, the other reason that the country is facing a water crisis, as the president of Iran alluded to, is because of gross mismanagement of the country's water resources. Here's in fact how a recent article from the New York Times described it. Quote, Environmental experts say that the water crisis stems from decades of mismanaging water resources and other misguided policies, including the overdevelopment of urban areas, draining of groundwater for farming, and excessive construction of dams. Iran has also piped water to the central desert regions to feed water-intensive industries such as steelmaking owned by the government. Now, this general mismanagement of the country's water supply, it can further be broken down into two different parts. The first part is what's been colloquially called the water mafia. This is a pretty large network in Iran, which is comprised of several different groups. You have political elites, you have contractors, you have several engineering firms, as well as IRGC affiliates. These are groups affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And this group, that's again colloquially known as the water mafia, they are behind many of the large-scale water diversion projects, many of the dam construction projects, and the groundwater extraction projects throughout the whole country, which on the surface seems fine. It seems like general development. However, Iran has the opposite problem that we do here in the US. In the US, it's an endless amount of red tape to do anything. If you are building a new project, it might take you 10 years just to jump through all the bureaucratic hoops. However, in Iran, it's the exact opposite, where as long as you're in the right circles, maybe you grease the right palms, you can do anything. You can get projects done without any environmental assessments. And often what will wind up happening is that the projects benefit a small circle of well-connected people, the people in this mafia, to the detriment of the common people living in the cities, the countryside, as well as the farmers who also live either in the countryside or sort of the suburb area. So for example, when water is taken and it's piped over to the central part of the country that's more arid and desert in order to manufacture steel, well, that water is no longer available for use by the people from which it came, which naturally enough includes the farmers. Which actually then leads us to the second part of the water mismanagement problem, which is the extremely inefficient agricultural practices still being used in Iran. If you look at it at a high level, roughly 90% of Iran's water is used in farming, which makes sense. I mean, food is important, and food naturally takes water to grow. However, much of that water is actually lost due to waste in the form of either outdated irrigation, misallocation, and inefficient farming techniques that are literally stuck in the 1970s. Also, the central government, they've been focusing on having the country produce more water-intensive crops, things like pistachios, sugarcane, as well as rice, which have naturally then increased the average amount of water that's necessary to grow 1 calorie of food. And so you take that all together, this mismanagement of the water supply strained the overall system significantly. And you combine that with the most recent heat wave that rolled across the country, and it just became a disaster.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, which is Patriot Mobile. Look, one of the best things about America is the fact that we have a choice. As long as there's not a monopoly in a certain industry, we can choose who we associate with and who we do business with. And so if right now you're doing business with a cell phone provider that doesn't quite align with your values, consider making the switch to Patriot Mobile. They are an unabashedly America-loving company. You don't have to sacrifice any quality or service. They work with all 3 of the major US networks, meaning if you have service in this country today, by switching to Patriot Mobile, you will have equal or perhaps even better service tomorrow. Also, they make the switch super easy. You can keep your phone number, you can keep your phone, or you can upgrade your phone if you want. And maybe best of all, their customer service staff is all based right here in America. And so you can give them a call, and within like 15 minutes, they'll have you up and running. Also, if you currently are stuck on a contract or you owe money on your phone, there's actually no problem because Patriot Mobile has a contract buyout program. And so if you're still on the fence, maybe you've heard about Patriot Mobile, but you're not sure whether you want to make the switch, well, they're actually offering a special bonus for you. You can use promo code ROMAN, that's ROMAN, and they'll give you 1 month of free service. So making the switch is a no-brainer. Just head on over to patriotmobile.com/Roman or just call 972-PATRIOT. Again, that's patriotmobile.com/Roman or just call 972-PATRIOT. And again, use promo code ROMAN, ROMAN, to get your first month free. Patriot Mobile, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. And now back to the video.
As you might have read, one day last month in July, a part of Iran saw a heat index of 149 degrees Fahrenheit, making it quite literally one of the hottest places on Earth. And that most latest heat wave, it created two additional problems. The remaining waters in the reservoir began to evaporate even more, and at the same time, the people living in Iran, they had to deal with this extreme heat at the same time that the remaining water was evaporating. And so you combine that with everything else, and it created the situation we're seeing now. People in the cities don't have regular access to water. People living in apartments can't even get water through their taps. The government is shutting down their offices across the whole country. Farmers are running out of water. And besides all that, you have the other problems like rolling blackouts, skyrocketing inflation, and the aftermath of that 12-day war with Israel, and I guess also the United States, although, of course, we never declared war, but we did bomb them, so it depends on how you look at it. Regardless of that, though, what it means is that it's been a rough summer for the Iranian people. Now, of course, I'm not an expert on Iran at all, but I did have a phenomenal opportunity. Last week, the CEO of the Persian edition of the Epoch Times was actually here in New York, and while she was here, I was able to grab her for an interview over on my other show, which is called Primetime. And let me show you a small snippet of that interview where she sort of lays out for us the situation that Iran is currently facing.
People are looking to store water. Like they're searching for every drop of water just
so
to
when it's
store
on, you're filling your buckets.
Exactly.
So it probably defeats.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want to say something, about this electricity outage. Is that something new is happening? Is in 2021, Supreme Leader allowed to have this cryptocurrency minings. And then there is
say no more.
And electricity in Iran is so cheap, right? Yeah. And then there are these farms that mostly are kind of affiliated again with IRGC, and all the benefits goes to IRGC, that they are kind of doing. You know, there is around 1,800 these miners in Iran, devices. And also there are Chinese nationals working on some of the farms because it's banned in China, so the miners come to Iran with cheap electricity, and they can license them, they can work there. And this is also a way to circumvent the sanctions, right? Because Iran, foreign currency reserves, it's getting lower and lower compared to 2018. It was $120 billion. Now they cannot sell oil. And they cannot easily provide the oil just to Chinese companies. So now it's shrinking to 33 billion in 2025. So this means that they need some way to get around the sanctions, and this is a very smart way to do that.
So that's like a good example of like how the water mafia operates, right? Like you have these Chinese Bitcoin miners, and they want to come. They can't do Bitcoin mining in China, and so they set up shop in Iran, and they bend the rules to bring the water to help the Bitcoin miners operate, right, with either the electricity or whatever the cooling. And it's like a small circle. It's not really helping the population. It's just helping the people making those deals, right? There's another case I read about steel manufacturing. The same thing, right? Like there was a steel manufacturer owned by the government. They diverted water that was supposed to be for the people in order to manufacture the steel, and that's it. And everybody got rich, except for the people, I guess, who needed the water in Tehran or any other of these cities.
Yes, there is one. No, it's not in Tehran, actually. There are two steel manufacturers in the province of Isfahan, which is the very, the river that people love that river, but for many months of the year, they stop the water in the river. And it's happening for many years. Like it's, at least I remember from 20 years ago that they're stopping the water for many months. To kind of divert the water to somewhere else. It can go to steel or can go to some other provinces for agriculture as well. So this is a type of mismanagement that we're talking about.
If you'd like to watch that full clip, meaning that full interview, I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there in the description box below. I'll also throw in the description box several resources if you want to read further about the water mafia, as well as what the Iranian people are currently facing on the ground, some first-person accounts of what it's like currently living in a situation without water. Also, just as an aside, as I was making this video, I realized I know a lot more about the situation in Iran than I initially thought, because I thought, well, I don't know anything about Iran, but as I was writing more and more, I'm like, actually, I know a decent amount. And I was thinking, why do I know this much? And it suddenly hit me that the reason is that at the Epoch Times, we have, I believe it's now 26 different language editions. So we have different editions for each language, and each one of those teams is dialed into their own country and their own diaspora. They know what's going on a very deep level. They have insight sources, and they're able to really give great scoops, good analysis pieces, and they publish it in their language. So for instance, in the Persian edition of the Epoch Times, they publish that, but then we all share resources. So we take their article, we translate it into English, and then we publish it on the English Epoch Times. And so it's like the Epoch Times is really growing into a phenomenal global media with reporters and editors all across the world. And it's a phenomenal place to learn about what's happening. It's I didn't realize it. I guess I knew it, but I didn't realize it so viscerally until just recently when I was working on this video and some other videos. But it's cool. So I guess that's a long-winded way to say if you'd like to subscribe to the Epoch Times and get access to this phenomenal treasure trove of analyses, information, other stuff we put together, infographics, documentaries, videos, it's all on there. I hope you subscribe. I'll actually throw a link to a sale page that we put together. We're having a sale. It's the end of summer sale. You know, the wind is changing, the weather's getting colder. You might be saying, oh no, the summer's ending, but the bright side is that we're having an end of summer sale. You can check it out. I believe it's 50 cents a week for the whole year, so it's very low amount of money, but you get access to all the information. Hope you check it out. And I believe they're throwing in 2 free gifts. Click on that link. They'll take you to the page where it'll show you what those free gifts are with your subscription. I hope you join us because the Epoch Times is growing. And you can become a member and just join this thriving community of people who are, I would say, more critically minded and free thinking than the average person that you'd find. Maybe just sort of self-selects that way. The people who are interested in subscribing to an outlet like the Epoch Times are perhaps more just critically minded. And so the forums are fun. Like for every article, all the great information in there, the forums are perhaps even more fun because you can see people's reactions. Some people have like inside accounts that you wouldn't even think of, or just points you wouldn't think of, different angles, different ways to look at the facts that you wouldn't even think about. It's a good community. So again, that's kind of a long-winded way to say I hope you subscribe. I hope you check it out. The link will be down there in the description box below. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.